Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning, everyone. My paper is entitled Rediscovering of Anglo-Indians of Visakhapatnam, an overview. Visakhapatnam has been, in fact, there are certain facts that I just want to share. It is equidistant between Madras and Calcutta. And there were more than like 200 plus families of Anglo-Indians, and with the passage of time and migrations and post-independence with regard to employment opportunities, people moved to other parts of India and abroad, in particular, again, Kolkata and Chennai. So I'm happy here to be at the second International Conference on Anglo-Indian Studies, and I would also like to add here that I was a student at St. Aloysius Anglo-Indian Boys High School in Visakhapatnam, which was established in 1847. And I'm not a Catholic nor a Christian, I'm a Hindu. But most Hindu families in Andhra, or probably the well-to-do families, prefer to send their kids into Anglo-Indian families. In fact, I personally did not stay in any of the Anglo-Indian family, but I have friends who have stayed in Anglo-Indian families because we were expected to pick up the etiquette, habits, etc., so that in future, in whatever jobs we get into, we will be able to conduct ourselves better, be it in India or be it abroad. So we were basically sent like that. And in particular, the boarding school, we were encouraged to speak to mostly the Anglo-Indian kids in English so that we would better ourselves in English. Today, I am an assistant professor of English. And I feel that the city of Vizag was never represented properly, and I thought this is an occasion for me to speak about my wonderful city, Vizag. And just to give you a brief understanding, because I'm sure most people might have heard of the place Vizag. According to history, the city was named after the god of valor, Vishaka. It was a part of the Kalinga kingdom under Ashoka's rule in 260 BC, and it passed on later to the Andhra kings of Vengi. After this, Pallava, Chola, and Ganga dynasties ruled the city. In the 15th century, Visakhapatnam became a part of the Vijayanagar Empire. The Dutch, the Portuguese, and the English established themselves in Vizag from the 17th century onwards and used this as a major trading center to export textiles, ivory, tobacco, indigo, etc. The port city is well documented in the histories of these colonial powers as well as Indian historical records. Visakhapatnam was the colonial name given to Visakhapatnam, one of the important places of the British Raj. The city, also referred to as Vizag or Voltaire, was an important strategic control center for the then British for its rule amidst Eastern Ghats mountain range and the northeastern part across the Bay of Bengal. In fact, the city is situated almost equidistant between the then Madras and Calcutta, the two important presidencies of the Raj. Today, it is the largest city in the newly carved out state of Andhra Pradesh in India, and has the credit of having the oldest shipyard and the only tactical Indian natural harbor in India. The Anglo-Indian community in the coastal city of Vizag is a minority living in the mainstream society, holding English as a mother tongue and following Western style of life. Their devotion, love of music, art, costume, cuisine, and gender equality have some striking differences from the traditional Indian society. Despite constitutional protection, reservations, and nomination facilities, they doomed their privacy, and the general public in Vizag maintained a false impression about their origins, social life, and organization. Historical background, social cultural patterns, resemblance to European life, and the complexities coiled the community, which faced the threat of extinction, aroused the curiosity to go deeper into their life in its totality. And no serious study has been made on the cultural heredity of the Anglo-Indian community in the city of Visakhapatnam. The officers of the East India Company had settled in Visakhapatnam in the middle of the 17th century. However, after battles and mutinies for power in 1803, Visakhapatnam was carved into a district with a collectorate under the rule of the British. The city continued to be an important military station of the British India, which paved for the growth of the Anglo-Indian community in the city. Since the advent of India's independence, Anglo-Indian community began to migrate to bigger cities like Calcutta, Madras and Secunderabad in India, and most others are believed to have migrated to England, Canada and Australia in search of better livelihoods. Several Anglo-Indians of Visakhapatnam city were known to be good teachers and are stated to have moved with ease outside the community too. Being literate, the community had one of the most progressive ideologies, denouncing the dowry system, forced arranged marriages and gender bias, and the women were also quite liberated. Culturally active, they influenced almost all aspects of the city, be it education, sports, music and dance, or even the social scene. While most members of the city's Anglo-Indian community are descendants of the British soldiers and administrative officials, some of them are also of Dutch and Portuguese descent. And even today there are Dutch cemeteries and the European cemeteries which exist in the city of Visakhapatnam. Anglo-Indians initially concentrated in areas like Soldiarpeta, Gnanapuram, Surya Bagh and Old Town of the city. In the present day, the old town of the Vizag is clouded with immense pollution from coal dust from Vizag port. It is one of the most polluting area. That is the reason people had to move to different localities, and however, people have moved in terms of a community as a whole. Hence, most of the Anglo-Indians have moved to other parts like Madurvada and Chinnavolted areas of the city. According to a city-based Anglo-Indian historian, Edward Paul, the first and second generation Anglo-Indians were mostly with the armed forces or served as administrative officials. The subsequent generations mostly worked in ports of railways and followed a fully European way of life. Mostly Roman Catholics and few Protestants by religion, the community would be found every Saturday and Sunday in churches, which served not just as a platform for religious congregation, but also as a forum for socializing and cultural dues. Dressed in fashionable clothes, they would dance, play music and exchange pleasantries in the churches. Almost all Anglo-Indians had penchant for music, and some of them are music teachers who have a lively social scene, good live bands and guitarists, while most houses had pianos. Thanks to the penchant for socializing, they were also instrumental in setting up many clubs. Besides, they also made good sportspersons and were into hockey, football, bicycling and athletics. In fact, I also want to mention here that Vizag probably is one of the most cosmopolitan cities we have in India, and it is one of the reasons is not just because, or is apart from Anglo-Indians, the presence of Navy also adds a lot to that, and it's a small city but with a lot of population, but still it's a beautiful city. In fact, it has been also very recently adjudged as I think the third best cleanest city in India. From the time when the missionaries of in fact, speaking about the church, I also want to add that it was open. The church was open to all of us. Even I have attended. I was also a part of the choir at some point when I was a kid, and we had this privilege of respecting other cultures. It was probably there I've learned that kind of acceptance, tolerance towards everything. So, be it any religion, we used to celebrate all the festivals back in school, though it was a Roman Catholic school. Run by the missionaries of St. Francis de Sales. From the time when the missionaries of St. Francis de Sales landed in Visakhapatnam in 1846 and began to stay at the fort area of the town and the area of the present St. Aloysius School, there was a place of worship that was made by converting a dancing hall of a building in 1868, and the hall thus made was transformed into a church dedicated to the most sacred heart of Jesus. The new church was supposed to be exclusively for the Anglo-Indians, who were numerous in those days. Only in 1965, Sacred Heart Church was officially erected as parish. By an agreement made in 1935 between Father Commerson, Superior General of the MSFS, and Bishop Peter Rosselin of Visakhapatnam, the Sacred Hearts Parish was entrusted to the MSFS for its administration. Another agreement made in 1949 between Father A. Grorod, the Superior General of the MSFS, and Bishop J. Bott of Visakhapatnam ratified the former agreement, and thus Sacred Heart Church continued to be administered by the missionaries of St. Francis de Sales for the Anglo-Indians. In fact, back in school days, we were all trained in such a way that post-schooling from St. Aloysius, we were sent to Loyola. Preferably, it was at one point Loyola, Chennai, because the town or the city of Vijayawada was also similarly developed on the lines of Chennai. And even most films which are shot in Chennai are remade like as if they have been shot in Vizag. So there are such similarities between Andhra and Chennai, because this was all under the Madras presidency. There is this Sacred Heart Church, which exclusively caters. There are a couple of churches which I'm going to speak of the old ones. The first one is the Sacred Heart Church, which is in the locality called Soldier Pit, and this exclusively caters to the Anglo-Indians. And any wedding that takes place between the Anglo-Indians is only celebrated there. If it is between an Anglo-Indian and somebody outside, it is never celebrated there. So that is one unique feature of the church. There is another church, which is the St. Joseph's Parish. In particular, churches form an important role in the lives of Anglo-Indians because it helps them to socialize, because they are a minority community living, and when people meet at churches, it is a wonderful occasion for people to interact, know one another, know relatives, probably. Some Anglo-Indians are also scattered in small towns of Andhra like Rajamandri, which is been now renamed as Rajamahendravaram. There is a significant contribution, and also in places like Kakinada. There is another port town called Kakinada in Andhra, where there are Anglo-Indian families who are much minority. And in fact, probably because love of the land, the elders have not really left the place. And some kids have gone abroad or gone to bigger cities. And speaking of the St. Joseph's Parish, the early part of the history of St. Joseph's Parish, which is which is known as the Voltaire Railway Station Parish, was interwound with that of Nanapuram. With the establishment of East Coast Railways, a big railway station was built in Voltaire. As there were a good number of Catholic railway employees, Bishop John Mary Clerk felt the need of having a church for them. 10 acres of land adjacent to the station was acquired in 1992 to build a church, a convent and a school. The present church and the old St. Joseph's Convent were constructed by Brother Nicholas Page. The church was blessed by Bishop Clerk on 3rd December 1903. It was meant as a chapel for St. Joseph's Sisters and for the use of the English-speaking community. It was erected as a parish in 1956 exclusively for the Anglo-Indian community and non-Telugu Catholics of the locality. Apart from this, there is another popular church called the Rose Hill, which is popularly known as Hill Chapel. It is situated on, even if you Google, you get this basic information. It is also one important parish dedicated exclusively to Mother Mary, and every year December 8th, it was erected sometime in 1868, and December 8th is celebrated as the Mother Mary's feast or the Hill Chapel feast, and it is a fantastic event which takes place in Vizag and is celebrated every year on December 8th. And one of the major contributions apart from religion, the other contribution was towards education and saw them instrumental in setting up of many English medium schools. And as I've already told, as far as education is concerned, one of the oldest schools in India is St. Aloysius Anglo-Indian Boys High School, which was established in 1847. I passed out in 1997. I was like the 150th batch. So 150th batch and we also had students coming all the way from Calcutta, like places like Tangray. Some of the Chinese families, they used to send their kids into these boarding schools. I don't know why they never wanted them to be in Calcutta. They used to send them all the way to Vizag and study there. And even eminent people like Nobel laureate Sir C.V. Raman was an alumnus of this school. And Wikipedia gives you this information, Sir C.V. Raman. And Sir C.V. Raman's father used to work at one of the oldest colleges there called Mrs. Avian College. And since that entire part used to come under Madras presidency, and it is like comfortable for traveling. So when his father worked there, Sir C.V. Raman happened to study. And this school was exclusively like reserved for the elite kind of people. Even today, I recently moved to University of Hyderabad, but wherever I speak to some of the elderly people that I am from St. Aloysius, they look at me, oh, you're from St. Aloysius, like a kind of an awe, because it was a school which gave us our identity and a lot of pride. Aubrey Hoyle, a former teacher at St. Aloysius High School, recalled that life was enjoyable those days with studies in the school being very exciting and the character of the school being cosmopolitan, with students from different parts of India enriching friendship and life. We have mostly people from Odisha. Visakhapatnam is close to Odisha. There are a lot of families from Odisha and West Bengal who have settled at Vizag. Apart from this, the St. Joseph's Girls High School, which I spoke a couple of minutes ago, and there is the Fort Catholic Girls School, which cater to mostly to the Anglo-Indians. And most of the Anglo-Indians and it is a well-known fact that the largest source of Anglo-Indian employment is on government-owned railways of India. And in the past, various types of railway positions have been definitely reserved for them. They have received special considerations in matters of pay, housing, accommodation, and schools for the kids. Large number of Anglo-Indians were also employed in such government bureaus as the Telegraph Department, the Maritime Customs, and the Indian Medical Service. 50% of all Anglo-Indian males are employed either in transportation, public administration, or the public forces, all of which positions are either directly or indirectly under government control. And in addition, a certain percentage were engaged in trade and industry, where they chiefly served as clerks and stenographers in European firms. It is said that the Anglo-Indians seldom accepted employment in Indian companies. Thus, nearly 3/4 of the Anglo-Indians were directly dependent upon the Europeans in India for their economic livelihood. And practically all Anglo-Indians are literate and have enjoyed some formal education, but very few are university graduates, and they are unwilling to attend Indian universities in competition with the Indian students and unable to afford an education in England. A university degree, however, is required for a great many government and commercial positions, and the Anglo-Indian is thus generally debarred from competition with a more highly trained Indian candidate. In fact, one of the major observations that I have seen about the Anglo-Indians in Vizag, because I belong to the city, is that most of them, when they turn 18, just like how it happens in most of the European families, 18 the child becomes an adult and then they become independent. And most of their education gets stagnant at 18. Though people have a lot of potential, they don't put it in acquiring qualifications which the other Indian students do. In terms of, let us not speak of the quality, but in terms of having that eligibility qualification, most students don't work towards that, and that is where is one of the problems that most Anglo-Indians face, and they are not able to succeed. And most of the Anglo-Indians, like as I just mentioned, though not too academically inclined, prefer to be financially independent soon after turning 18. Women were mostly into teaching and nursing, while men with the knowledge of English would get clerical jobs or work in the railways, customs, or port workshops, said Robert de Cruz, an old-timer belonging to the community. In fact, whether it is Robert de Cruz or whether it is Aubrey Hoyle, they were all my teachers and retired. They are now retired, and whom I could talk to. And what I am told in particular is that they were mostly into technical jobs, which gave them that kind of specialization, and that is what kept them going good. And coming to the celebrating or the celebrations, during Christmas, the homes and narrow bylanes of the old town, which is exclusively the city of Vizag at one point was just confined to the old town area, would come alive with decorated stars, Christmas trees, and lamps. Aromas of fresh baked cakes and melodious music would waft from every Anglo-Indian household. With a spurt in migration to Australia, UK, and other countries since the late 1960s and 70s, where there were around 200 plus families in Vizag, today around 100 families, mostly the elderly ones, are left in Vizag with life more about nostalgia for the good old days, while for some it's about waiting for the younger generation's homecoming from abroad during Christmas. And most of the Anglo-Indians, what I was told is that they have moved to even Gulf countries where they work in hotels, especially 5-star hotels, because their sense of receiving customers or guests, the etiquette is quite refined, and that is why they are respected. Josephine Clements, committee member of the Anglo-Indian Association, Visakhapatnam branch, observes that with the implementation of reservations in education for Anglo-Indians has opened up several opportunities to the community in the new state of Andhra Pradesh. In fact, yesterday Dr. Charles also brought this up. He spoke of the 185 seats that have been allocated in the United Andhra Pradesh, and this included for engineering, medicine, dental, architecture, pharmacy. And tracing the decline of Anglo-Indian race in India, Ms. Clements attributes this to lack of opportunities in education and jobs. Most of the Anglo-Indians migrated to abroad and a few decades ago due to lack of opportunities. In her words, we still have good teachers, but the rest are engaged in ordinary jobs for livelihood. Now that we have reservations in higher education, our children should utilize them fully to become good professionals, unquote. Further, she recalls that the services rendered by the community members in various fields such as Indian Railways, Posts and Telegraphs, medical services, defense services, education and social services. Thank you. Thank you very much.